And we are live. Justin Haley, thanks for coming on the show. Would you mind scooting over a little bit just so like your belly button's at the seam of this? This is a beautiful ping pong cover for a pool table. If folks at home don't know, this is definitely not real wood. This is some of that, what would you call it? I was just talking to someone about a deck the other day. But some kind of like poly bullshit. Who knows?
My dad's a huge ping pong fan.
Really?
Yeah, oh my God.
So you grew up in a household where this shit was serious? There was no fucking around?
My dad is very good at ping pong. It's no joke. He gave a guy a black eye with one once.
That is insane. Were you at this occasion?
I wasn't at the occasion, but I saw the black eye shortly thereafter.
Were hands thrown?
No, just ping pong balls.
If someone gave me a black eye with the ping pong ball, I think I would escalate. I think I would move to violence.
Well, the guy worked for my father, so you don't hit your boss.
Okay, fair enough. That's awesome. So how early did you start playing as a kid?
I mean, pretty early, you know. So, like, when I was really little, because my dad's so good, he would, like, play with things that weren't ping pong paddles, right? Like a shoe or a credit card, folded up piece of paper, you know, just to, like, just to show you, you know. But, you know, pretty young, but I never took it seriously.
That's one of those crazy hand-eye things, though, where it's like, who knows all the ways that you should train a kid to be an athlete, whether it's like the Kevin Nash, like, tennis ball and a basketball things,
Sure, yeah.
or if you're going to come out here and play some ping pong and just take it to them. It's like, it's an intimidating way to view your parent early on.
Yeah, would either spanking you with ping pong balls.
That shit is awesome, though. You gotta think also when you're growing up, like you want to have a place to see your parents be playful. Like if you don't have sports and you don't have music, like if your parents are just an authority figure, it's not much relationship to get to have.
That's fair. And my dad is a singer, you know, so like that helps too, you know. I think a lot of people who find themselves in the music industry, their parents or someone close in their family has shown them that this is a cool way to live. You know what I mean?
Well, it takes a special person to see it in a child and then to help kind of push it so it can become more than a passion. You know, if it's going to become a career path or if it's just going to become a lifelong kind of journey of it. So was your dad singing from the time that you could remember? And was there a particular genre they specialized in?
Yeah, so no, for sure. He sings still today in a group called The Mystics, and they've been playing since before I was born.
I feel like I've seen them sing the national anthem at the Reds games.
They are a favorite at singing the national anthems at the Red games. That's true. Actually, they just played Blink Festival, and I got to sit in with them for the entire set, so that was a cool experience.
That's badass.
But, like, my earliest memories were seeing them do, like, what do they call the event in Winton Woods? They have a Party in the Park, I think is what it's called.
Cool.
So my dad's group used to play Party in the Park, and I would run around as a kid watching my dad's group play, you know?
That's amazing. And where does he fall in, like, the vocal arrangement?
Oh, he's a baritone singer. And so the group sings, like, Motown-type things, you know what I mean? Like, Four Tops, things like that. And, yeah, so it's a 4-part harmony group. My dad sings baritone in that group.
That's badass. And I feel like that's a really particular place to, you know, your father's voice. You've heard it isolated enough that even as a kid, when you're watching a group like this, you can pick out how his line's kind of moving amidst this. So you're a kid that's trained to not just be there for the melody, which opens up the young arrangement mind. Like, you either got to be a piano player or you got to start singing in a choir to get that thing.
That's so true, man. That's so true. And it's so funny because the Mystics are made up of two groups of brothers, right? My dad and my uncle, who's the bass singer in the group, and another group of brothers, the Godfreys, tenor and tenor 1 and tenor 2, I guess is what they sing. But to hear all of their parts and to know them all so well, you know what I mean? Like, even the Godfreys are essentially my uncles. You know what I mean? To know them all so well and to hear the different parts and to know everyone's line, it definitely helps arrange, me being a guitarist primarily, you know what I mean, helps me think of things in a different way.
Yeah. And so why did you end up on a string instrument versus just going the vocal direction?
Well, my grandfather played guitar, so he just always showed me things on guitar, you know what I mean? But my first instrument, if I'm being honest, was a drum set. I got a drum set when I was really young for Christmas one year, and I loved it. It was this like little blue kid's drum set. I don't even really know, but I had it for exactly a week. And I went to the living room one day where my drum set was set up, and it was a keyboard. and my uncle started teaching me keyboard lessons because I guess the noise was too much for my parents.
And was this your uncle that was playing in the Mystics?
No. So this is a different uncle. My mother's brother is a trombone player in town. He used to teach at CCM,
Cool.
the conservatory. His name's Mark Fields. He's pretty well known in the jazz world if you're a jazz head.
I've certainly heard the name. So it sounds like there was like a rather intense caliber of musicians. Did you feel that stepping onto these instruments? Were lessons like pretty critical moments or not really?
I mean, definitely when I got older, but I mean, it was just such a normal thing, like it was no thing to hear my uncle, buzzing on his mouthpiece.
Yeah, just doing trills all day.
And which is like a weird sound to most people, but like that's very much home to me. And I went to SCPA from 4th to 12th grade, so it's like it's just been a lifelong pursuit. It's very normal.
Is by the time you hit 4th grade, did you already have like musical companions of your own age, or was it kind of a household thing? You were playing around them, but you were always the youngest in it.
Definitely always the youngest in it. By the time I got to SCPA, like I was basically only taking keyboard lessons with my uncle. I wasn't like already in a band or anything. And I went to Reading Hilltop, so like though we had a music program. Like before I got to 4th grade, it wasn't like it was just music class for elementary kids. You know what I mean?
Versus when you go to SPCA, it's like, well, now you're going to take actual lessons. We're going to start theory for 4th graders, whatever that looks like. There's some real monsters that come out of those programs, man. Whether it's T. Nava or it's Steve Williams or all these cats, where it's just like kind of the highest level musicians. It's not about the conservatory you go to at the end. It's how early you get introduced to true technicality and still being creative.
You mentioned T. Nava. He's 1 year younger than me. I've known him since I was in the 5th grade, and he's been in the 4th grade. And it's no joke. We all progress as people and artists as life continues, but he was bad when he was in 4th grade, y'all. Like he was already there, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
already moving in that direction,
Well, and I think there's like keyboard players are a very particular breed to me because unlike a guitar player, your left hand does the talking and your right hand pushes the message.
Sure.
Versus you have 10 fingers to kind of articulate everything that you're thinking, and you can be the greatest form of solo accompaniment, in my opinion. So someone like Dev Marvelous, who has this uncanny ability to fit wherever he needs to fit, if he's the full arrangement, if he's just one part of the voice.
Yeah.
But there's some folks that choose to develop their singing voice early on, and then there's someone else that just stays with their instrument. So to hear T. Nava get out of talk box, at that stage in the career where it's like, now I can, verbalize what I thought this guy's voice would be, and it's just incredible. Something like Girlfriend, where it's like, okay, this is straight catchy single, but all the ways he works into a solo and a live show, it's fucking outstanding.
Yeah, man, he's it's funny for me to think of him as T. Nava because I always think of him as his his Christian name, if you will.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, he's as far as he's just a master in musicianship. We as musicians are always striving for like virtuosity. You know what I mean? Like to cut down on the time it takes to think of an idea or wherever the ideas come from to like manifestation in whatever your axe is. You know what I mean? To cut that time down to like real time, to pare down the latency, if you will, is what the goal is, you know what I mean? And if it's not immediate for him, it's close to, you know what I mean? Like, and I'm sure, for anybody who's reached that level of mastery, be it Ron or T. Nava or a Dev Marvelous, or I play with Dev from time to time. He helps with the burlesque thing, but like the guy I play with the most, Jackson Steiger.
Yeah.
I dabble in piano. You play piano at all?
I suck, but I try.
Yeah, so same here. Especially if I see, like, when I watch Jackson Steiger play, man, I'm just in awe, it's inspiring to see people who have, like, taken anything and just transcended with it,
Yeah. Well, that really, I bring this up to my brother about his kids or about anyone in my family that has kids of a certain age, that there's a really odd sweet spot that you can't force the envelope.
Yeah.
But if you can put a kid in front of what's going to be their voice throughout their life, especially between 3 and 5, I think there's a level of development there that really is you're learning how to talk and how to play at the same time. And so some ideas are worse articulated verbally, and they're better articulated through the hands, whether it's Dev or Nick Meehan, the drummer, one of my absolute favorites. Folks that just have this incredible ability, like you said, to cut the latency out and to think through whatever that medium is.
Sure.
It really is a special type of freedom that every other musician that didn't kind of get that early step ahead looks for the rest of their life.
Sure, yeah. I mean, no matter what it is, music or like sports or anything, I think once someone finds something, there's always like, man, wish I would have started earlier,
Yeah.
Wish I would have started earlier.
Yeah. What do you think it is in older musicians that prevents going over that cusp? Is it education? Is it time on the instrument? Or is it just that formative period of life?
I think people's limitations are set by themselves. You know what I mean? Like, I think if you have, a bass player that I play with, Joe Lane, my right-hand man, if he says there's something about getting, 8 hours of sleep the night before a gig, eating all your vitamins, drinking water, 8 hours, you know what I'm saying? Like something about doing all the right things that doesn't necessarily equate to magic. You know what I mean? So if you got a musician that was introduced at 3 years old, you know what I mean, was led along his whole life or their whole lives in a direction, it doesn't necessarily always mean that they're going to come out, Jimi Hendrix or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, I think it comes down to the individual, right? Like, what do you want? How bad do you want it? And how bad you want it will dictate what you're willing to go through to get it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I just saw my buddy sent me a video the other day of this 74-year-old man in Japan who just started making EDM music, and it's good. You know what I mean? Like, so it's like,
yeah,
do whatever you want, but you got to, the later you start, the harder or smarter you have to work to get to your goal.
Yeah. Well, I see something really interesting in, like, so my dad's always been in the world of business. And funny enough, there was a situation where Ron Avant, was at an airport with my dad. And my dad's like, you need to give this guy a call. I'm like, you want me to call a random person that you met at the airport? He's like, absolutely. So I call him, and he's just a guitar player who's super proud of his son. And we just talk music for an hour.
And also a retired police officer.
No way.
Don't want to mess with Ron Avant, dude.
No, one of the nicest dudes, but it's just like to have people in your life that are like, you should randomly call this person and have a great conversation. It's like, those are moments where the universe just lines up in a really beautiful way.
I think I think that's a great way to put it. And I think the universe is always lining up in beautiful ways if you're willing to look for it.
Yeah, if you don't try to force it, like you had kind of said before, like the more you think that your plan is the plan and you try to just run that way, like we don't really know what is the linear way of navigating our own lives.
No.
You can just try to get a good night's sleep, try to do the right things, and the next right thing is going to be in front of you, but it's normally not just binary. It's not just zeros and ones. It's 50 flavors or whatever the fucking ice cream you're going to have, and,
right.
and you got to deal with that. And
that is, variety is the spice of life, but, it's easy to become impaired with indecision. You know what I mean? That's why I think it's important to work with teams, you know what I mean, to have people you trust to bounce things off of, because sometimes you're not pushing yourself hard enough. Sometimes you're going too far. Maybe you need to be reeled back a little bit. You know what I mean? So like surrounding yourself with like strong people, family, people you respect. You know what I mean? I think it's super important.
Well, one thing, going back to like the trying to get to that next layer of your playing, like for me, I think the hardest thing that I'm addressing right now, and I've probably addressed throughout my entire playing life, is my association with who I think I am, what I'm playing, and who that cumulatively makes me in the eyes of others. And trying to address the issue of ego between you and your hands. And it's it is really there for some reason. I'm trying to kick at that thing, but there's not many linear ways to get after that, you know?
So, man, something that has become apparent in my life, especially when it comes to playing or just progression in general, is like never stop taking lessons. I just recently talked to Brad Myers. I think a lot of people know, a lot of guitar players, especially in town, know because he's like the guitar teacher at CCM and
Yeah,
just like
one of the grossest dudes to ever have 6 strings. You know,
pretty much.
I'm glad he doesn't play a 7-string. We're fortunate.
He might got one at the house.
Yeah, dude,
don't put it past him. But like just like always, just because you're a professional musician now doesn't mean that you don't have some things to learn. You know what I mean? And especially if you're not. I wouldn't put myself at a level as like a Jackson Steiger on my instrument, right? So like I'm still like pushing forward, and I'm sure Jackson Steiger still has like people he emulates in places that he's trying to go. You know what I mean? So like where you are is always like personal, but don't be afraid to like experiment and try things maybe that you find. So what I used to do is I used to like to play with a lot of different people. You know what I mean? Like different groups. I don't really have the availability to do that now. But to me, that was like the more people I play with, the more or the better understanding I will have of what the thing is. You know what I mean? Like the communication between musicians in that form. You know what I mean?
absolutely.
And maybe there's something to that, but like again, if you're starting later or you don't have the time availability, you have to find ways to like work smarter if you can't work that hard. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which is finding a balance.
Well, I think the advice of continuing to take lessons, continuing to challenge the things that are under your hands or in your mind conceptually, like Brandon Coleman had put up one thing on Facebook about just like it's like a tongue twister for your hands. He goes, "This is gonna make you feel like you're not even controlling your own hands." And now I try to do that once a week, and I find myself then having more issues with "you are garbage," you know. But it's good for you to feel like you're in the "I'm getting better" place rather than "I should be good enough" place.
Oh man, yeah, no, that's for certain. I think you hit on something that is like one of the most important things is how honest you are with yourself. You know what I mean? I think music is great for this. Like being a musician is amazing for this thing, which is like even better for you as a person, for everyone as a person, is how honest you are with yourself, right? So your ear doesn't lie if you're listening honestly. So sometimes, yeah, if you sit down, somebody like Brandon Coleman is like, try this thing, you know what I mean? And it's like, I suck, right? That's a great place to start. You know what I mean? Like, I'm being honest with myself, right? It's not like I'm doing it and it's like, it's good enough. You know what I mean? It's like, no, I'm trash at this. It's a great place to start now to do all the things to make you better at it. You know what I mean? I started, I do martial arts, and that's really what it is. I started fairly late in my life. And when you do something like that, that's physically exerting as well as mentally, it's like, man, first thing I noticed is like, man, my cardio is awful. I cannot jump rope. You know what I mean? So first thing I did is I went out and I bought myself a jump rope. Yeah. And I jumped rope till I looked like I wasn't, awful at jumping rope.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Till I was passable.
Yeah, right. And then it was like, okay, so now I can jump rope. Now let's extend the time that I jump rope, right? And it's like, but keeping in mind that like rest time is important too. You know what I mean? Like, and how to balance those sorts of things into your daily life and what to extract from those things, the truths that you find in those things to put in your daily life.
Yeah. What encouraged you later in life to pick up a martial art?
My buddy Robbie Maloff. I got this awesome friend named Robbie Maloff who owns a MMA gym in town, or it's BJJ in fitness. We do BJJ and Muay Thai.
Very nice. And did you have kind of a physical hobby in your life before that it kind of replaced, or?
Well, I was lifting weights for about 4 years before that. And I was like, honestly, when I was only lifting weights, I was about done lifting them because it was, it just got kind of vain to me, right? Like, it was like, doing the movements and looking for bigger muscles or more weight on the bar, or just like a lot of things that in the greater scheme didn't really mean a lot to me, you know. And then I met Robbie Maloff. He and I were friends for a while before I ever went to the gym. And then when I went to the gym, it was like, oh man, this is it. This is why I'm lifting weights. You know what I mean? This is why I'm trying to get stronger.
Yeah.
Is to, you know, be a better to be better at this. You know what I mean? It gave my lifting motivation.
Yeah, kind of gave purpose to it.
Sure.
Yeah, I've always been told that you need three hobbies: a hobby that makes you happy,
Sure.
a hobby that makes you money, and a hobby that keeps you in shape. And if you don't kind of round your interests out in that kind of a way, then one of these aspects for your life will start to kind of dilapidate, you know. And
Sure.
nothing like being jacked and financially unstable. It's like that's a lifestyle choice, dog.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, you know, I think it's important to always. I mean, I'm big, and it's been preached to me that, you know, kinetic energy is very important in life. You know what I mean? Momentum. You know, so like if you know, the worst thing you could do is be idle. I mean, and now not to say that like everyone needs peace at times. You know, everybody needs serenity. You know, but to like as soon as you like drop the ball, like for instance, Louis Armstrong, I think I'm big on quotes, but I'm sure I'm going to paraphrase this. He says, "If I don't practice for 1 day, I know. If I don't practice for 2 days, the critics know. If I don't practice for 3 days, the public knows." So it's something about like staying at something, showing up for work. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That will push the ball forward. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and it's I like the layering of that too, because if you can stay on the level of personal accountability, there's not going to be your family judging you. There's not going to be your friends, strangers judging you. And like, are those things to fear necessarily? No. People don't need to have the rhyme or reason that you do for the things that are in your life. But your disciplines are, you know, the momentum of the ball rolling downhill at times.
Sure, yeah.
And if you start to veer from that path, it's like, well, then you're going to have to push this thing back up again, try to pick up some speed and some care for it.
And if you've lived if you've lived some amount of time and you have, you know, we've all done things we're not proud of. We've all, you know, backslid, if you will, you know what I mean? And if you find yourself in a hole and you climb out of it, you don't want to be back in that hole again, you know what I mean? But like inevitably, or not inevitably, sometimes you will find yourself in that hole again, you know? And it's like maybe you're deeper in that hole than you were the first time. And you climb yourself out of it, you start to, if you're a smart person, starts to learn lessons to not put yourself in that hole again, you know what I mean? And to do all the things that might prevent from holes like that happening again, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and so much of, you know, again, like we don't get to control if things are linear. Things don't go in the straight path that we would like them to 99% of the time.
Sure.
But a big part of being comfortable with the decisions in front of you is kind of clearing out the noise and the clutter that really is irrelevant to our lives. And like you said something about not having a Facebook or not doing much of the social media thing. Like, is that a very conscious choice to you to stay very far from that?
Oh yeah, no, definitely, definitely. I'm a pretty private person. Before Ghost Baby started, I didn't even have a social media. I had a Facebook once that got hacked, and although I tried to get it back, I never did get it back, and I was just cool with it.
Yeah.
I was just like, by social media. But, you know, I try to use the tools that present themselves for the reasons to use the tools. I definitely try to, like, limit my time on things like that. I try not, you know, the doom scrolling, I feel like is kind of a real thing, you know?
Yeah, even worse than doom scrolling was for me finding out how much my phone's listening with the Black Friday deals. It's like, do you need more Groupons to PetSmart? I'm like, I barely have pets. Like, what the fuck did I say that would lead you to this kind of conclusion? It's like, no, they're listening.
Yeah, they're listening for sure. You know what I mean? But this is just the world we live in now. We were talking earlier about gear, and I just recently bought myself a guitar that I'm gonna put a bunch of money in. And ChatGPT, man, like what a great tool, man. Like I'm learning all these new things, and I noticed that like at first when I'm asking ChatGPT questions, I'm like being polite. You know what I mean? Like, please. You know what I mean? And then when I noticed this, I was talking to my brother about it, and I was like, man, I'm just gonna keep doing it. And he's like, why? And I'm like, man, when they take over, they're gonna know I'm cool. You know what I mean? They're gonna need pets. You know what I mean?
Siri remembers every time you say thank you. You know, that's for sure.
I mean, hey, just why not?
So
be kind.
your guitar purchase was influenced by conversations with ChatGPT?
My guitar upgrades were influenced by ChatGPT.
And which ones in particular?
Oh man, so like tone capacitors, I feel like something that people don't really pay attention to, or like when people buy guitars, when guitarists buy guitars, they don't really think about things like that, you know. And nor did I. So I had to learn about capacitors, which was a journey, which is cool.
Yeah, and kind of walk us through, like, for the non-guitar players, what matters about a tone capacitor.
So the tone capacitor attaches to the tone knob. A tone knob is, in essence, a low pass filter, right? It cuts the highs out of the guitar signal to the pickups that, you know, project the guitar sound. But there are these capacitors are made in a variety of materials, and those materials can affect the tone, the overall tone, and then also voltage capacities as well.
Voltage capacities of the tone capacitor?
Of the tone capacitor itself.
Interesting. And so how does voltage kind of play a part in that? It's like the impedance coming off of the pickup itself?
I believe it's goes to the potentiometer in which rolls off, because that's where it's least connected. All right,
slow down. That's a word right there. How many syllables? Potentiometer? Fuck.
So the potentiometer, see, like, I'm telling you, man, ChatGPT. Just whatever questions you have before you ask Google.
And do you pay for a subscription to that?
I haven't paid for it yet, but I don't even know what it costs. But like, take my money, like, for real.
Dude, it's interesting that we're not implementing those things in places like this, where it's like, yeah, I could go YouTube search this, or I could have the most involved conversation with the computer possible right now.
Now, you got to be careful, you know, because it's not real time. You know what I mean? They stop. I don't know exactly when it is. But they stop it. Like, it's only artificial intelligence is only able to search so recently in the internet history, right?
Interesting.
So you got to be careful. So like, if you're asking it something that's like cutting edge, it's not going to tell you, right?
Yeah.
But you know, tone capacitor's been around forever. So
yeah, and there's plenty of new material about that, and especially if you're gonna say, okay, I want to custom order, you know, these 2-tone capacitors for this particular guitar setup.
Oh, for sure. Because like, it's funny. I ordered paper and oil capacitors, right? And I've only ever been accustomed to what are known as orange drop capacitors, which is an even longer word than potentiometer, what that actual material is made out of. But when I got the capacitor, it's enormous, right? And I was like, oh, I messed up. Like, it was immediately like I made a mistake. So I asked ChatGPT, and it's like, no, Justin, thank you for being polite, but paper and oil capacitors are larger just based on their construction, like what they're made out of. And I'm like, oh, okay, thanks, ChatGPT.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And who will you go to for this kind of guitar work?
So I got a guy. So
that you want to keep a disclosed source.
No.
Don't want to get him too busy when you have all these things.
No. I'll tell people. His name's David Kelsey. He's David Kelsey was. I met him. He was the head chef at Metropole when I worked there in 21C Museum Hotel, which is funny to have a chef be your guitar tech or do all your guitar work for you. He does everything for my guitars for me. And then Nick Fryer I made the set of pickups in my Stratocaster, man, and my Stratocaster has been my number one for a while. He does phenomenal work too.
And did you find that kind of going down the rabbit hole of, customizing your pickups, customizing your tone knobs, making sure that all this stuff is as unencumbered for your playing as possible, did that kind of inspire you to take your playing further, or did you go further down the gear rabbit hole?
So I think going down the gear rabbit hole was just like I needed to understand what I was doing, right? Like it was just like I was just tired of having like a rudimentary like knowledge of stuff. You know what I mean? Like I really wanted to know like why, like, like if I have my guitar or my amp set a certain way, I and I turn my guitar all the way up, like I'm not getting all the volume I want, and now the tone is distorted. Like, you know what I mean? Like I was just frustrated with my gear, right?
Yeah.
So like it was like I was tired of messing around and wanted to know exactly what was going on. So my furthering my playing is just like a spiritual thing. You know what I mean? I think that's really, at least it always has been for me. You know what I mean? It's making myself better is, and whatever it is just the walking meditation. You know what I mean? Just like my agreement to myself and whatever is beyond.
Yeah. I think the pursuit of a lot of musicians just kind of take the place of a pilgrimage.
Yeah.
You know, it's like the latency between you and ideas starts to raise the question of, well, where does the idea come from? And I felt a lot of relief in attributing that idea something far beyond myself.
Yeah, sure.
Labeling the muse or referring to God and,
Yeah.
and having that kind of place for this. Because more than I consider myself a guitar player, songwriting, I think, is the vocational pursuit. That's
Yeah.
what I feel most called to do and to do better. But there are days where you pick up the phone and there's nothing on that end of the line.
Sure.
And to attribute that to your own successes and failures starts to be a really heavy aspect of that.
Yeah.
So when it came to moving from just a playing capacity and moving into this more curation potential, did that free up your playing to be more about that journey?
When I started booking, it didn't really change my playing at first, right? When I started booking, I just was gonna add it to the things that I did in life.
Yeah, the many balls being juggled.
Didn't know that it was gonna affect me in such a profound way. And in fact, before Ghost Baby opened, and I knew I was gonna be doing this, I brought my uncle Mark Fields, the trombone player, down to Ghost Baby, and I was showing him. I was so excited, and he had very serious conversation. It was not. He needed to tell me that this wasn't something to take lightly, right? Like that a lot of people, in the past and still now today and surely in the future will exploit having a position like this, right? Like no matter what the club is, or what the stage is or whatever, you know what I mean? You need to be sure, he told me, that later in life when you look back at this part of your life that you did it well, and you did it the right way. And I've taken that super seriously, right? So I didn't know that it was going to affect my playing. It was going to affect how not just the way that I approached my instrument, but the way I approached setting up a show, like what I thought a show should be and how to best relate to an audience, because like, although artists told a lot that like, don't worry about the artist, you know what I mean? Just telling a compelling story. Story's only compelling if the audience can relate to them, So you do need to like do stuff for the people that are willing to patron you. So finding a balance between being honest and being entertaining, is something that I still struggle with, but it's something that I'm aware of now.
Yeah.
That I might not have necessarily thought about in the past.
But it's great to have someone that you love and respect in that kind of a way that could pull you aside and kind of forecast this thing rather than you finding out on your own, what the chapter looked like in retrospect.
I'm glad because I definitely was able to avoid some pitfalls along the way, but I fail every day, and we learn new lessons. You know?
Yeah. Well, there's a great music marketer on Instagram named Jesse Cannon that talks about his life in production and how that relates to the new trends that come across with people trying to popularize their music. And is that the only goal? Absolutely not. But boy, do we all think about it a lot.
Yeah.
And you know, especially when Spotify Wrapped comes up, we all want to feel important in our own lives, and it's tough. But I was trying to clear the time to listen to this video where he's trying to emphasize that you haven't done the work to find out what makes you special and to refine that thing, because your authentic self and the things that make you stand out as such is the only marketing driver that you have to work with. Because you trying to build an image, you trying to build a fan base is all dependent on you knowing what you're selling.
Yeah.
And it's hard to commoditize yourself like that. Like I took an entrepreneurship class in college where they said you don't make the product and find the audience. You find the audience and you make the product. And that's really tough for folks that are already in the world of trying to sell the thing that they've built. But if you have an audience,
Sure.
and you start to ask and you have them help you refine that thing, well, now we're starting to make headway.
Right.
And that should lead to that populace growing. But those are big questions. And you're trying to sell a thing that's personified. It's a room that breathes life into artists and bands and opportunities. But how you find the thing that just makes that special with all these people being themselves, you know, it's always a mixed blend.
I think the thing that makes anything special are the people that are involved, right? Like, if I think of my favorite cities, my favorite places to go, one of the top places is New Orleans. You ever been down to New Orleans?
No.
Oh my God, do that, dude. Especially as a musician, just do it. Just do it. And it's not the Bayou. It's not the French Quarter, though the buildings are beautiful. It's not the beignets from Cafe Du Monde. It's the people that you encounter along the way, you know, including the musicians that choose to live there and bring the culture. It's the people that make anything special. So, like, whenever you're doing things like this, whenever you're curating shows or festivals or whatever, it's always best to highlight the people that are willing to work with you and to give people things to do that are based on their strengths, right? Because we all have strengths. Something I read recently that I think that was profound for me and super important for people is whoever the scientist was that like projected the theory of like the alpha male, first found it in wolves and then later recounted it, right? There wasn't an alpha male in the pack of wolves. What wolves do is they rely on each other's strengths. So they each lead at different times depending on who's best at whatever they're doing. You know what I mean? Which I think is how successful teams operate.
And do you think that's really profound when like you start to look at the toolkit that is the people in your life, how you push and pull on the hierarchy of leadership in a way that feels coherent. It can't be tentative about who's in front here.
Yeah.
You're good at this, you go get it.
Yeah, go get it.
That's a tough place to be, especially when you relate that to the solo artist career. You know, do you have an MD? Do you have someone that helps with? Most of the time, you wear all 50 of those hats,
Yeah, you
and
do.
that's a bit chaotic.
So, like, I think solo artists have, there's pros and cons to everything, right? Like, when you're a solo artist, you don't necessarily have to contend with other people's schedules in their lives, right? Like, especially, like, the older you get, people have families and kids, you know what I mean? They have schedules that must be respected. When you're a solo artist, it's all on you, you know what I mean? So, like, that's a great freedom when you're a solo artist. But if you're a solo artist, you're going to be doing all the work, too.
Yeah. Well, I think that kind of the thing I struggle with most as a solo artist is the sense of ownership and people feeling invested in the work that they participate in. And that's not just your bandmates. That is the best of your listeners.
Sure.
That is the folks at the venues who participate in helping you curate these shows and whatnot. And that kind of relates to my larger concern with Cincinnati's music population is that we don't feel invested in each other. in a similar kind of way. There's still a bit of a catty mentality that kind of carries on from. I don't know what the root of it is.
This is something I've heard my entire life, but have never experienced myself. I'm sure. Hey, I'm sure there might be people out there that talk shit about me and the way I play, but they've never said it to my face. And, I don't think this about people that are playing in town, right? Like, everybody starts somewhere, in my opinion, and at least in the community that I'm a part of and people I know, we're all very loving. Like, for instance, before I came on the show today, I looked to see, people that you've had on in the past. A lot of them were my friends, you know what I mean? Like, who are all very loving and supportive for each other. I've heard this thing said about Cincinnati, the Cincinnati music scene. I don't feel like it's catty at all. At least I haven't experienced a lot of it, if any at all. And I try to be as supportive as I can to people as well.
Yeah. Well, and you're doing the work that it takes to not be in that situation. So I can understand where it doesn't feel like that is what's directly in front. You're doing the thing that can hopefully change that. But I think when it comes to how the listeners and the performers who currently aren't on stage kind of interact with each other, like, we're still working to find that camaraderie at times. And I think in the right situations, we are doing it. But then there's still pockets of the music scene that feel like it could be a different city in a different era. And the fact that those aren't the people you call for the same questions you would ask to your counterpart that's right next to you. Whether that's folks that are in the punk scene, or folks that are in more of the pop world, or this beautiful Clifton house concert scene, the DIY scene that's really alive and well.
It's crazy.
But why those bands don't get an opportunity to circulate into some other clubs or to share bills with bands that haven't done that scene. It's very interesting.
So, at least in the business that I run, Ghost Baby, and this is probably very true, which in fact I know it is for a lot of clubs around town, is that the people who are managing and own the clubs have an idea, of how the club should be, of how it should run, right? So, like, for instance, Ghost Baby. If there's an artist that wants to play Ghost Baby, and has never played Ghost Baby before, and more importantly, has never been to Ghost Baby before, might not or might not understand exactly what Ghost Baby is, and what the overall vibe might be, So, like, if there's a heavy metal band that wants to play and they're coming in town from Seattle, never been to Ghost Baby, all they've seen is pretty pictures on the internet, I'm not booking heavy metal bands to Ghost Baby, man.
Yeah.
It's just not going to happen. It's not what it is. So to, like, as we were talking about before, to try to impose your will, to try to make yourself fit in something that isn't for you is not going to happen. I mean, like, I can't accept it. You know what I mean? And to be upset about that is only hurting yourself. You know what I mean? Like, you can't be mad that squares don't fit in round holes. You know what I mean?
Well, and I think that it's a good point to say, like, if it doesn't fit here, it fits somewhere. And you and I know those resources well enough that whether I'm talking to, there's a lot of times where I know I'm going to be out of town and someone reaches out to me about where I'm playing. If I have other places that I know to send you, I'm going to try to send you, because you not being there for me presents a beautiful opportunity for you to fall in love with something else that's going on in the music scene.
Absolutely.
And I think you would call it early adopters. There's another thing from this one entrepreneurial class that's burned in my head. It's like there's 10% of the people who got there first that are proud that they got there first. They found something unique in that. They felt especially rewarded for being there first. Those type of listeners are what takes a scene to the next level. Them being rewarded for their time. And I knew I was going to make a reservation during the first week that Ghost Baby was open because I wanted to see Lauren Elise. God bless Lauren
Elise.
Oh, my God, the queen. But one of those people as well that in all the places that I try to promote other artists and what they do. If you don't know who Lauren Elise is by this point, I'm devastated, but let's fix that, because you're going to really take away something from this.
Sure.
If you don't know Dev Marvelous, if you don't know all these acts that I see as a huge part of what the sound of the city could be.
Yeah.
But it does take you having the perspective of, I give before I take. I go to the club, I experience it. Like, there was nothing that was going to tell me what Ghost Baby was without going and having a glass of wine, listening to Lauren, and enjoying that show. And lo and behold, the one person I really wanted to meet that night walks up and can tap me on the shoulder. It's like, so there's people behind this. And like you said, the only thing that's going to make a 5-story underground, cavern with some drapes special is people in it.
Yeah.
And you have an awesome bar staff of folks that really do care for the music, and they participate in that thing.
It's again, man. It's about the team. We were talking about this earlier. We sort of hit on it. Like, nobody does anything alone, right? I kind of struggle even saying this myself, but like even like when you put on your pair of pants in the morning, right? Like, everybody puts on the pair of pants one leg at a time by yourself, but that's not true, right? Because like very seldomly do people grow the material that the pants are made out of and then weave it yourself, and then like, what I'm saying, like, you need help with those pair of pants, like, if you want to be real about it. So like anything, it just requires the work of so many people. So like Ghost Baby, man, it's just like, it's the hard work of a lot of very talented people every day, like every day. And that's what makes anything successful. And even if you have that, sometimes things aren't successful, which really just comes down to luck, if you are willing to put in the work.
And I think that's such a beautiful point to make. Like, I got a tattoo that I drew up for my dad probably 6 or 7 years ago. Again, like, my dad's a business guy. He doesn't participate. He doesn't know the music. But when I was 14, he asked me if I want to do this for the rest of my life. And I was confused by the question, but I said absolutely. And he took the time to help me set up an LLC,
cool, to
get an accountant, to do all these things right the first time. And you think about what those moments mean. And in this tattoo that I got, it's someone at the base of a ladder holding it. So you could be at the top of this ladder reaching for whatever you're reaching for.
Yeah.
And there's so many times in the way that we compare and contrast ourselves to others where people can be shy about the blessings in their life or envious about the blessings in other people's lives.
Yeah.
And if you're not utilizing those in a way that means you're holding the ladder for somebody else to climb, then we're not getting there. Like that saying of, you're standing on the shoulders of giants.
Yeah.
Remembering that, framing that at the beginning of every day, so you don't start out thinking that I'm going to push this thing uphill by myself. It's like, no, someone has formed the rock, so it's not a square, monument that you're trying to push up this thing.
Sure.
We're slowly smoothing the way so that other people can be great at the things they're great at.
So like, I think this is it. This is the secret, if there is any secret, so when we were talking about like how my job as booking a booking manager for many things affected my music, is when I started doing the burlesque thing with Queen Bee Cabaret. It's such a large cast of people, and everybody does very different things in a show like this, so it's like knowing exactly who's best at what, right? Without overwhelming an audience with an enormous cast. It's a cast of 11 when we do it at Ghost Baby. So that's a band of 6 people, right? All different instruments. 2 vocalists within that band of 6, sometimes 3, and 3 showgirls with a kitten, So it's a lot of moving parts, So it's like, though I may be the band director in this thing, I have to play music that the showgirls want to dance to, or else it's like, what the hell are we there for? You know what I mean? So it's like coordinating with the showgirls to know what they like to hear, but also sometimes maybe what they want to dance to isn't necessarily something that is easy for the band to replicate. You know what I mean? So being able to be flexible, to bend to maybe what they want, but being willing to change. You know what I mean? It's just like, going in with a plan, but being ready to change at any moment. You know
Yes.
what I mean?
Well, and there's so many like escape hatches in music that like you need to be aware of. Like you need to develop these trap doors that we can kind of go down.
Sure.
I had Justin Dawson,
Yeah.
amazing player.
My dude.
But we were talking about like how people lack the permission to dance and to involve themselves in the music, and I think the really interesting thing about going to the burlesque show, like, and again, I've never been, I've just seen the online side of it, but it's like you want to talk about vulnerability in a show. It's like this is beyond intimate and beyond giving, and these folks do it confidently. And if not, they're working to do it more confidently. Like it's a growing progression like any musician would. And I think, coming out of the pandemic, there's a lack of a willingness to be intimate, to be vulnerable, to be expressive without concern for how others might view you.
Sure.
Because the only way we've seen it, same for me, is through the lens of a phone, where everything's supposed to be perfected, clean, filtered, whatever the fuck.
Sure.
And you miss so much of... How many times have you seen a drunk guy at a bar doing the worm?
Right, yeah, sure. Something about...
Yeah. Every time you see that on video, you think, Jesus Christ. It's like it never looks good in that place. But sometimes I'm at the bar watching this guy do this in a pile of broken glass and fireball, and it kind of hypes me up.
Sure, yeah.
Sometimes you're missing the energy, the reception. Like, my wife just got into photography, and I'm amazed how much more mood and feeling is expressed in a single frame than there ever is in video.
Sure.
Because it gives the literal without giving the what if, and it takes away the vibration of the room.
That, man, yeah. That's photographers are amazing. Because of the burlesque side of what I do, I've gotten to know a lot of amazing photographers, and yeah, man, like that's a whole different bag right there,
Yeah. When you were initially taking over this role at Ghost Baby, were most of the conditions of the room kind of set up, reservations, 2 shows a night, all that, or were these kind of ways that you saw to best frame entertainment there?
It was with... So I helped start Ghost Baby. It's almost 5 years now in February. So I was there when it first started.
Congrats on that, brother.
Thanks, man.
That's a crazy... 5 years flies by.
Yeah.
That is a chunk of your life that you put towards something that we all believe is doing better by us.
Well, thanks. That's sweet to say, but it's it wasn't easy. We opened in 2020, and we're open for 5 weeks before we closed for 3 months because of the whole pandemic thing. And then like even when we reopened, man, it was people didn't know. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't for certain. Nothing is for certain, but we're here now and it looks good. So thanks.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. What were we talking about though? I
like the conditions of the room, the things that make it what it is, the mystique and how you apply that with concepts.
So, it's a ongoing conversation, right? So my boss definitely had, one of the owners of Ghost Baby definitely had an idea of what it wanted to be, right? And we collaborated, and we still, sometimes change of what the room feels like on particular nights. So like, for instance, for Ghost Baby, we brought in Bunkhouse to do a projection on the dome of Ghost Baby, right? So like, it's completely different from what Ghost Baby typically is. We also host tea dances for Tea Dance Cincinnati, I think every other year or so.
What is tea dance?
Tea dance is so what a tea dance is I don't want to. I'm pretty sure this is a historical fact, but if I'm wrong, definitely tell me.
Get in the comments and talk some shit, players.
Tell me I'm dumb. But back in the day, I believe before it was so socially acceptable to be a homosexual man in society, what was done is that there were these tea parties thrown in the middle of the day where these men would take what is known as a beard or a woman that would like maybe socially pose as their significant other, and then go to these parties that were really underground places where gay people could be themselves. If I'm wrong again, I'm sorry. But there is an organization, T-Dance Cincinnati, in town that carries on in this tradition that I might have totally butchered. Sorry again, by the way. And we host these parties sometimes down to Ghost Baby.
Very cool.
Which is cool. So, like, for parties like that, right, like, it doesn't look like Ghost Baby ever looks, you know? So, like, all the tables are removed from the middle. It's a dance party, you know? We do things to the tunnel to make it look cool ways. So, like, we're constantly finding new ways that the tunnel is cool. Like,
Yeah.
The conversation isn't over, which I think plays to the fact that Ghost Baby continues to grow and morph into things that weren't necessarily thought of in the beginning.
Yeah. Can you kind of tell me about the history of the tunnels underneath the Cincinnati?
As best as I can. I'm probably going to butcher this one too, but our portion. So there are lots of these tunnels underneath the city. First of all, right? Some of them are connected. Some of them are not. Some of them are in good shape. I know that there's a historical society that gives tours down to portions of them. Some of them I know are completely like just dilapidated. Our portion of the tunnel was built sometime around 1850, pre-Civil War, as a loggering tunnel, right? And what that is before refrigeration, what they would do is they would dig real far deep in the ground where it's 55 degrees all the time, so the beer would mature without rotting, if you will. So that's what our portion of the tunnel was by Champion Brewery, if the Historical Society is right.
Mm. And does it connect to any of the other tunnels that are in the area?
So my tunnel, or our portion of the tunnel, I don't believe does. But again, some of them do connect, so I'm told.
Yeah. So I've seen the one that is underneath of Revel, and I know that they've done some tours and whatnot. JC, rest in paradise, beautiful man,
Yeah.
Incredible people.
Not one of the nicest people.
Yeah, he had shown me that once on a tour with my sister that we had done. But I was drinking too much wine to retain any of the historical facts.
Fair.
There's also a subway system in Cincinnati, correct? That was I'm pretty sure it was one of the biggest mob infrastructure things that we ever tried to do. And the subway system doesn't fit a subway train because it was just an embezzlement thing, so they didn't give a shit.
So my dad, you were talking about your dad as a business guy. So is my dad. My dad's the CEO of Metro in town right now. So I do know, just because of what he does, that. Yeah, of course. Everybody knows there's an old subway tunnel of a unfinished subway that they were planning on doing here in Cincinnati. But I know there's a lot of that. Cincinnati and Covington, Kentucky have a rich mob history.
Yes, Newport is bumping in the regard.
But also, I know that the mob doesn't exist, so I don't.
Yeah, well, it is interesting to see. There's so much history of the city that, you can go to the Historical Society and hop on a Segway and check that shit out. But these are aspects of who we are and what we're doing that enrich this environment, and I feel like it doesn't get enough publicity or understanding. Sure. There's spots like the Mansion Hill Tavern, which is the most amazing blues club that we have in the city.
Sure.
That is this historical building where you can still see guys like Sonny Mormon play and a fellow named Joe Waters out of Dayton. It's some of the best blues that you'll find in this part of the country on a Monday fucking night, whenever. So helping to correlate these things is one of the greater missions that we all kind of have in our lives that some people just are going without answering. And
are you from Cincinnati?
Yeah.
Yeah, so am I. And I think this being our hometown, it's hard to see this place as tourist, right? So me being a lifetime musician, and as I'm sure you can relate, these things have always been just right there at your fingertips, right? You've always known about Mansion Hill Tavern. You grow up hearing about, depending on how old you are, Southgate House, now Southgate House Revival, things like that. If this is what your interest is, but if you're, from DC and you're just in town for the weekend, yeah, man, it can kind of seem like it, or if you're moving here from somewhere else and this is your thing, it can kind of seem hard to find. You know what I mean? For instance, when I was coming up, every Sunday night, man, at Allen's Cafe. You ever do that shit, dude?
I've never done Allen's.
Oh my God! Every Sunday night, Bluebirds used to play with the what did they call it? The horn section, the Columbia Tusculum. I remember, but
Yeah.
Allen, the guy who owned Allen's, played trumpet in this thing, man, and it was like no space in Allen's. You know what I mean? But they would put this 9, 10, 12-piece band up right in front of the window. And everybody came every Sunday night, man. And it was just like a known thing if that was, if that's what your head was at. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
but you would have known if you had gone to Allen's, for dinner, that something like that was about to happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, like, I mean, I don't know, man. Like, so, like, I don't know. John Mayer once said that, like, music requires an usher, but maybe culture does in cities too, because Cincinnati isn't in New Orleans, and things like that might not be well publicized.
Yeah, and I think it takes the right people and loving those people properly. Like, so I never got to see the Bluebirds at Allen's. The Bluebirds eventually moved that gig to Latitudes out in Anderson, and I had seen that a couple of times, and I never got to know any of those guys too particularly, but I bought my Dr. Z and one of my tellies from Marcos.
Marcos Hastry.
And Marcos is one of the baddest motherfuckers to ever do it.
He got a bunch of my money too.
Dude. Well, and a guy like that deserves a little more love and distinguishment amongst the younger players. But when you don't have historic clubs that get preserved in certain parts of town, we do kind of get pockets of what's going on, whether it's Anderson, whether it's OTR, whether it's Clifton, whether it's Newport. Sure. Something like Morella from Southgate came on here. It's just like you hear about what this woman went through as a young kid watching her father run this thing. She's like, I remember being scared of Johnny Paycheck the first time I met him. It's like, this is the kind of country lore that you can only get from someone that was unpleasantly exposed to this because you're a kid and your dad's got a maniac's idea of running this kind of venue. So there is a really heavy weight to folks like yourself. They're taking on the booking side of this and trying to not just preserve culture, to push culture forward. And how you start to prioritize these things is only up to the madman at the helm of the bus, and how you want to drive that thing.
I mean, and again, I can't stress this part enough, right? I'm on a team, right? Like, of people, many of which are much smarter than me. And, it's just even things like, for instance, we were talking earlier that I was lucky enough to work on the Blink team for the past 2 Blinks. And, man, you want to talk about a bunch of moving parts, man. Like,
that's horrifying.
It is.
To imagine the design teams that go into this, but the amount of electricity that you have to drop all across the city, the amount of events, the amount of pianos you got to push out in the middle of nowhere.
Just one that I know of. But, like, things that you would never even consider, man. Like, so, like, first... So, like, if we just want to talk about, like, the art side of it, like, first, they find artists that are willing to do something crazy like this. And then you got to find people who own properties that are willing to let you paint them. And then it's like, once all that's done, then, you got to set aside a week for masonry work, right? Like, to make sure that the walls are smooth enough to paint, what I mean? Shout out Noah Biding, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, I mean, just like so many things that, someone who attends something like Blink Festival just like has no idea that, even goes down. And things that, like, I have no part in whatsoever, I think what's cool about Blink is because it's such a large team, that even when we go out and experience Blink for ourselves, we're still just like so awed by all the things that, like, we had no idea was even going on, and just like the sheer numbers of people that come and also enjoy things like this, and just like the beauty therein,
Oh yeah. Well, and also the first year the pot's legalized and people walk around here out of their minds, just that things enhance the experience, and if that's the way they go, boy, was it potable. I mean, walking through Washington Park, it's like, we are throwing down out here, people.
I mean,
yeah. Well, and I think the craziest thing I saw from Blink this year was Ernie Johnson at Memorial Hall. I didn't get to see that show. What's the team that does the lighting for that?
So
You mentioned them earlier for doing the projection in Ghost Baby.
oh, Bunkhouse. You talking about Bunkhouse?
Yeah, I think they did all the projection mapping for that. That shit was crazy.
Man, Ernie Johnson from Detroit. Love that group. Though all those dudes are awesome. And then also congratulations for making it on the boat this year. You heard they made it on the boat this year.
Dude, I did, and they're going to sink that ship. Okay, it's going to be incredible.
Love the hometown love. Yeah, man. Like so. Okay, so like for instance, what the difference of something of like what I do as opposed to like what I began doing and like what most artists do. It's like for a show like Ernie Johnson from Detroit. They played in the Covington stage, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And you're right, Bunkhouse did an awesome projection. And these artists have to like, you know, as an artist, you have to arrive to the stage on time and then, you know, put on a killer show, which is, you know, is probably what your you know, your daily life is like as an artist and what mine used to be like. Now, what, you know, if, for something like Blink Festival, what my job is like as a production manager is to, you know, make sure the stage, anywhere from like how big the stage is to like what equipment is this used on the stage or like even which direction the stage faces. You know what I mean? Things, again, that you wouldn't necessarily think, right? So like if you're going out like as a regular person or as a person who didn't participate on the team of Blink, or even if you did participate in the team of Blink, you would go out to see a beautiful mural with a projection mapping on top of it. What you don't know is that the projection mapping artist and the mural artist are completely separate artists or teams of artists, if you will, because again, nobody does anything alone. For instance, like the artist might have like a sketch of the mural that they want to do, but a team here in Cincinnati will get like the base colors up on the side after it's been masonerized. You know what I'm saying? Just to get like a heads up, you know what I mean? So like so many different moving pieces to something that, I mean, and even if you work on it, right, like, and you have like all people who attend Blink Festival hopefully will have a plan as to like what they want to go out and see for the day, inevitably, you know, your eye will take you somewhere else, you know, or your ear, you know.
For sure. Well,
I don't know if I answered that question.
Oh, you know, you did. Well, within that, like, at this point in your career, what's it like to gauge whether you have the capacity to take on certain projects or not? Are you constantly kind of weighing in priorities, seasons, what you want to do, what you get to do?
So because of like all the, you know, because of what I do for work, I don't really get to play in a lot of different projects, right? So I've limited the amount of projects I play to one, which is the Queen Bee Cabaret show. Yeah, man, I just gotta, I have to pick my spots. I have to pick my spots just because I don't have a lot of time availability, you know?
Yeah.
We're always thinking of new stuff to do. And, you know, and those things obviously take a lot of work from a lot of different people.
Yeah.
So and burlesque is such a big production alone that anymore these days I don't really do much.
Yeah, there's no room for additional things.
I mean, I don't want to say that. I don't want to completely close the door on things. You know, but like there have been projects that I used to play in that I can't anymore.
Yeah. Do you ever go to an open jam or anything like that to kind of scratch the itch? Or
you know, you mentioned Mansion Hill Tavern. I've been meaning to go on Sunday nights, but I haven't made the. And then on Monday nights, you mentioned Justin Dawson. He does that thing at the lounge.
Yeah.
Man, I haven't been to one. Man.
Text me if you're going to go to either of these anytime soon.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
No, I want to do both of them soon.
Okay, cool. We'll pick a weekend. We'll throw down.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
You bring your 335 and I'll bring my 339.
That sounds excessive. That sounds like a lot of fun. Well, outside of all this, is there anything that you'd like to promote as we kind of conclude today? Anything you'd like to mention?
Well, we keep coming up with funky ass shit nearly every single day. I don't know where this is.
Dude, that's a great bio. Coming up with funky ass shit every single day.
I mean, nearly. So tomorrow we're doing a Repeal Day celebration at Ghost Baby. Times are 6:30, 8:30, 10:30. Every third Wednesday at Burlesque, we do a Queen Bee Cabaret does a burlesque show, 6:30, 8:30, 10:30. It's a great time. You got to make reservations at Ghost Baby. Best online or call,
Yeah.
Not me. But you can, and I'll work it out if I can.
Does Lauren do second Thursday?
That was the next one. Lauren, at least, so before I came on the show, I was I looked up your show, and Lauren Elise was one of the first ones I saw the thumbnail for. And Lauren, I've known for so long. I love Lauren Elise. I watched like 30 seconds of hers, and you were like, "Man, you are a bad motherfucker." And Lauren Elise said the most Lauren thing of all time. She said, "I received that." And I'm like, and she is,
yeah,
and she does. So like, yeah, second Thursdays, Lauren Elise, come see it. It's she's got a great show.
Yeah, she's the charging dock, and we're the batteries. You get in the room with that girl, you walk away, you're just feeling full but kind of overwhelmed. You're like, she's a presence.
She is. There are some people that are just like masters at working in the room. She's one of them.
Yeah. Well, anything else in addition to that?
Queen Bee Cabaret. Oh, Limitless, BJJ and Fitness, Ghost Baby, more to come.
Yeah. Well, brother, you do amazing things for our musical community, and you're quite the human being. So thanks for stopping by today and being a part of it. My friends, that's Justin Haley. This is Weekly Wave. We got Nicole Forte coming on in a little bit, but we will catch you soon. Peace in the meantime.